Good morning. Today is March the 24th of 2012, and it's time to finish up yet another series, and in so doing finish up the Art of Living Octave. We're in the spiritual discussion, the spiritual lesson for the Reconstruction topic. Through this month, we went through several phases. The concept of Reconstruction based on self-acknowledgement, then mind-space interaction. The spiritual concept, appropriately I believe, is living as art. What we discussed previous to getting into this octave is the perspective and actually the relevant truth that what we truly are is a master stroke of an artistic imagination, breathed into conscious life and imbued with free will. See, what I've been attempting to convey through this octave is the realizations that I've come to of my own innate divinity and my contribution to the unique tapestry that is creation. For me to be able to do that as an individual point of consciousness, there's certain things that are required of me. Actually, we've discussed the main ways to find these things, but let me just take some time to clarify what they are. The very first one is a purpose. A purpose for the individual point of consciousness. And I'm not speaking about the general purpose of existing. Because in general, the purpose of existing is experience of various forms. And I mean that in both senses. In various forms, meaning all of the forms you went through during the act of incarnation cycles, from being an atom to becoming a molecule to becoming complex molecules that we call organisms in different forms: cats, dogs, sheep, bird. But also air, wind, earth. All of those constitute different incarnate cycles that have specific experiences. And those experiences add to the richness and the variety of the collective experience. See, we've discussed already that we never stop being the prime creation, the one experiential organism. But what we did was realize that if we were to give ourselves their own dreams and hopes and realities, the life, the gain of our life, the potential, the possibility for that life unfolds exponentially, because everyone's pushing their hardest to be the best they are. It's not just one driving force. It's not one, God, dictating how everything should be in line and be to its best potential. Instead, it's one collection of gods that say, how do I become the best that I am? By encouraging all that is me to be its best. And then acknowledging that. Acknowledging not only the journey, but the triumph, the achievement, the grandeur of such an ideology. See, what you get when you sort of shed away all of the preconceived notions of how you're supposed to interact with reality is an organic model of dealing with the experiential nature of reality moment to moment. Realizing that sometimes it's appropriate to view yourself as oneness, as the collective. And sometimes it's appropriate to deal with yourself as a single focus point of consciousness. And that leads us to the second necessity, which is perspective. If the first one is purpose, realizing your individual contribution to the overall tapestry of existence, perspective is what actually gives you the ability to see your thread, but also to recognize that it is a tapestry. Let me put it in a more tangible sense. If I were to get together all of the greatest weavers that exist on the planet at whole that aren't electronic, and I said, listen, I want to make a tapestry that rivals any tapestry that has ever existed. So what I want from each of you is to weave a beautiful and intrinsically individual tapestry that can also be a chord of a larger one. And then I would set them to that task. And then I would spend time looking at the beauty of each one of their individual contributions. And then when they were done, I would say, alright, now let's weave this together in a unanimous whole. And let's all enjoy it together. See, that process would give me a true perspective of the outlying nature of reality, or surreality, arguably. That's what this is. Each one of us is an individual tapestry. We are weaving the experiential nature of our existence through our choices and our actions. And in so doing, we're creating a very unique, profoundly beautiful thread. A light thread, if you will. And if you're capable of doing it, if you're capable of dissolving the egoic small, the microcosm version of the I, then you can expand enough to see how your thread is interacting with the harmonic threads of the universe itself. Let me explain this in terms of scientific understanding. We've come to realize that all matter initially stems from the explosions of massive stars. It creates heavy molecules. What happens is when light explodes, it continues to be light, but transforms into denser versions of that light, more substantive versions, ones that stay around instead of disappearing in different directions. And then what we found scientifically is that it's frequencies or sounds that tells that heavy light what shapes to take. So scientifically we've already understood, we already know, but haven't reached the understanding that all existence is in essence a harmonic light weave. And I mean that. It's a harmonic weaving of light particles that have become dense enough to be called molecules. And different frequencies emit from the soul of those particles and tell them to stay together in certain formations. What happens when you gain the proper perspective, or I'm sorry, maybe perhaps in my opinion the proper perspective, the most galvanizing perspective for your life, and you've realized your purpose, is you get to a point where you can actually praise legitimately the existence that is, because you've realistically gotten to the point where you can accept it on its own terms, where you're not labeling it as God's existence or my existence, but rather as existence, and appropriately then applying that label, or if you can, no labels, to yourself within that existence. And then it becomes a reverent action to be a part of it. Your whole life becomes a praise. Last week we discussed how if there is a reverence due, if there's a praise to be given, at least while I'm in this lifetime, my praise rightfully belongs to this planet. Because all that I am, all that I eat, all that I take comfort in and find joy in, all of the resources of my existence are from this planet, at least this lifetime. When I realized that, when I really accepted it and understood it, acknowledged it as the core foundational concept of my reality, I became harmonically reconnected to this planet, and my whole life became a praise of those concepts. Every breath that I breathed became a reverent worship of the fact that my lungs were constructed to breathe the skin of this planet to draw nourishment, energy, consciousness. They're filtered in such a way that it keeps out any harmful pollutants and brings in only the life-giving substance. That my body is built in just a harmonic way enough where I can consume the flesh of this planet and draw life-sustaining energy from it. Do you understand how masterfully beautiful that is? A small shift in perspective changes it from eating, changes it from breathing, to an act of reverent worship for the nature of your realistic existence as it appears to you. See, I don't seek to aggrandize existence in order to validate my own portion of it. Instead, what I seek to do is acknowledge existence on its own term and then apply an appropriate reverence to it. I am composed of trillions of light particles that have taken the form of cells. Each one of my cells lives and breathes. They respirate. They have drives and emotions. They have lifespans. Those cells stay together in such a way that I have a body. Do you understand how cool that concept is? Let me explain to you how I got to this point, because now it's time for me to start giving you tangible modalities that you can apply to your life and gain the type of freedom, wisdom, and power that you've been looking for. I've explained the fact that we are living art, but what I haven't done at this point is explain what to do with such a thing, because actually, honestly, I had to get to a point within myself where I was comfortable doing that. I hate the idea of people giving answers, ready answers to other people, because I feel it's a binding concept. But I realized that it was a limitation on my part to not be willing to share the power and potency of what I've gotten, simply because I had no desire for elevation. Not ascension, that I could manage on my own. Egoic elevation, I had no desire for it. I still don't. But if it will help, so be it. There's a model that I constructed literally hours after I awakened. It was an organic model for dealing with reality in the most interesting way possible. My first goal, my first purpose when I woke up was to be the best human being, the most potentiated human being that had ever existed. Because from my point of view, there had never been one. There were people who were mind-oriented and they were really good at academic shit, but they sucked at everything else, basically. They were spiritually dead and their bodies were just decrepit. Like, literally, they were a walking head. And then there were people who were enlightened and gurus and beautifully wonderful and loving creatures, but they lacked in the mental department and in the physical. And then there were warriors and fighters who lacked the other two. But to my way of viewing it, with the exception of perhaps Alexander the Great, there was no human being who had ever actually reached potentiation in all three levels. So my question was, how do I do it? And I came up with an answer. It was very simple, actually. View all information as equal. It's 4 steps. View all information as equal is the first one, and it is equal. Take what is useful to you from that information as equal. Take what's useful to you. Discard what is not, which is just as important as consuming what is. And the 4th one is create the rest. What you will find when you do that is that all of the information exists, even if the answers do not. Most of the information that I'm disseminating to you does exist in other forms, but it does not exist in a localized form that I know of, save in the vessel that is me. Because I have applied this theory outside of myself, I have viewed all information as equal and sought within that information what is useful to my unique existence and the purpose that I have cultivated. I discarded everything that isn't, because if it's equal, nothing is sacred. And then I made up the rest. And what I made up amounted to 0.01%, but it was the glue, the thread that weave my tapestry. Find what can weave your own and do it. I love you.